Hey Eastside, thank you for joining us. We are so happy that you're here. If you're a guest, I want you to fill out a connection card. It's in the comments below. Go ahead and fill that out. Maybe you just want to connect with a pastor. Maybe you need prayer. Go ahead and fill that out. We would love to connect with you. And again, just thank you for joining us. We know that this is not possible without you guys. Also, a lot of you know we've been going through this series, The Playlist. It's been so much fun. I don't know about you guys, but it's been one of my favorite series. We've been going through these songs we hear on the radio, songs we've heard in church, just talking about the meaning and connecting it to where we are in our faith. So this is the last week, so you better tune in. A lot of good stuff planned for this service. So again, watch the series, watch the message. You're gonna have a lot of fun with it. Also, I don't know if you've been a part of Eastside before, but we do this thing called Pathway. It's a great program to get people further connected. But if you have not heard of it before, watch this video, get a closer look at what we do. Guys, Pathway is an incredible thing we do here at Eastside because we believe that people need to take that next step in their faith. Maybe it's just, I'm ready to go all in, Jesus. I'm ready to make this all about you. Maybe it's membership and you've been following Jesus and now you want to make Eastside your home. That's a great thing you can do. So sign up. You can go to our app. You can sign up if you go into the church. You can go to our website. We want you to be part of that. We got our first point, our second point, or third point, ways that we can get connected serving, ways that we can get in a group. We believe that this is essential to deepening our faith in Christ. So go ahead and sign up for that. Also, we have a program here at Eastside called Operation Christmas Child, and it's when we send gifts to kids in other countries who do not have the opportunity to have a Christmas present. And so that is something that we've been a part of for the last couple of years. Last year, we sent 750 boxes. This year, we want to send more. So if that's something you want to be part of, we want you to get a box. We want you to bring those in no later than November 15th because we want to make a difference in the life of a child. So this time, we're going to get to worship. I know you've been waiting for that. I'm going to send it over to the worship team and have a great service.
What's up, Eastside? Let's all stand. Welcome to our online family watching right now. We love you guys. Let's sing together. God of creation took our place. God of redemption opened the way. The day you gave your life seemed to fail you in our the stone you rolled away as you walked out of that grave. Come on! Let this place erupt with parade. Why do you look for the living among the grave? 'Cause Jesus lives, all the earth sing out. The power of death has been broken. This changes everything. God of perfection became sin. God of salvation changed everything. Day you gave your life, seemed to fail you in our right. But the stone you rolled away as you walked out of that grave. Let this place erupt with parade. Why do you look for the living among the grave? 'Cause Jesus lives, let all the earth sing out. The power of death has been broken. This changes everything. Because you live, now hope begins. Because you live, our song will never end. Declare that right now. Because you live, now we can live. This changes everything. This changes everything. Yeah. Because you live, our hope begins. Because you live, our song will never end. Because you live, now we can live. This changes everything. This changes everything. Let this place erupt with parade. Why do you look for the living among the grave? 'Cause Jesus lives, let all the earth sing out. The power of death has been broken. Come on! This changes everything. Oh, this changes. In just a second, we're going to take communion together in this room, and a couple hundred people in this room right now, and we're going to do that together. And a really awesome thing is there's going to be several hundred people joining us online, taking communion also. In our online campus, there's people all over the place in their homes joining us right now. And how cool is that, church? That we can be in here in this building and also in our homes, and all together we are representing what the body of Christ is. Amen. And so we're going to invite those people and join them as they take communion. And let's just remember what Jesus did for us on the cross. You've got a cup that had some juice and a cracker in it. It's a picture of his body and his blood broken and shed for us on the cross. And so we're going to pray about that, and we're going to take that, and we're going to sing. Join me right now. Father, thank you for our brothers and sisters in this room and our brothers and sisters in their homes. Thank you for reaching people no matter the cost. No matter the cost. So we stop and we take communion. Understand what that means, that we remember your body was broken, your blood was shed for us. And we stop and we say thank you. And we love you, Jesus. Amen. Amen. we're soaring toward your eyes, singing holy, holy, we are standing on holy ground, standing on holy ground. Up with the stars outside of time, held in the brightness of your light, and all of the saints and angels cry, and all of creation testify. We're singing holy, holy, you are holy, we are. We're standing on holy ground, we're standing on holy ground. Holy, holy, we are. We're standing on holy ground. We're standing on holy ground. Sing this out, sing holy. Holy, you are holy. We're standing on holy ground, and we feel you all around. Tell him what he is right now. You're holy. Lord, you are holy. We're standing on holy ground. We feel you all around. Holy. Jesus, you're holy. Oh, you are holy. We're standing on holy ground. We feel you all holy. We're standing on holy ground. We feel you all around.
Chances are you had some plans in 2020 that didn't turn out the way you'd hoped. Graduations, weddings, vacations, funerals. Yeah, even funerals. Man, what a year. Remember the first time you heard that the government wanted you to stay in your house? Remember walking into a restaurant and seeing tables marked off? Remember the first time you learned the elbow bump? What about school through a laptop, or church at home, or sports with no fans? Who was the first person you knew personally who got it? Well, if the population of the world ever came together on anything, man, it's this. We're all ready to be done with the virus. That was the motivation for a few guys from 2 different churches 3,000 miles apart to come together on some Zoom calls. They asked, what would a song sound like when this thing is over? What would it be like to get in a crowd again, to hug a friend, to go to school or church or the mall or wherever? Well, that sound, they reasoned, would be like dry bones starting to rattle and come to life. It was the same sound the Old Testament prophet Ezekiel described when Israel turned to God and became a strong nation again. Rattle, rattle, life, life. Well, this day will come for us. And in the meantime, let's learn the lesson. There is nothing impossible for God to do. Not the resurgence of a nation, not the ending of a virus, not the healing of a marriage, or the removal of a cancer, or the appearance of hope in total darkness. Whatever is dead in your life can start to rattle by the power of God. And singing it helps us to believe it.
When Ezekiel was in the valley of the dry bones, the Lord said this to him. He said to me, prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath into you, and you will come to life. Join us tonight as we sing. We want to declare that as we breathe new life into dry bones. Let's sing. A Saturday was silent, and surely it is through. Since when has impossible ever stopped you? Friday's disappointment was Sunday's empty too. Since when has impossible ever stopped you? Come on! Sing it out! This is the sound of the dry bones rattling. This is a praise, make a dead man walk again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again, yeah. This is the sound of the dry bones rattling. Yeah. You believe he can work in our lives like that, amen? Right now. Come on, church. Our God is able to save and deliver, heal and restore anything that He wants to. Just as the man who was thrown on the bones of Elijah.
If you are thinking to yourself right now, I don't remember that song in the hymn book, that would be correct.
Because it's not.
You can have a seat. Would you thank our worship team for leading us in worship? Great job, great job. Let me give a shout out to our overflow crowd. We always like to yell at them and say thanks, so give it out to them. They're back in the overflow area. And our online people, we've already recognized you, so good to have you here. Thanks so much. It was last summer, all the way back, I think it was around early summer, when Aquila called me into his office. He said, dude, I got to show you something. And he got his computer and got it all ready, and he opened up a video of the song that we just sang, the new song from this worship place, and put it together, and they were just now introducing it. And I sat and listened with him in his office the first time I ever heard the word or the song Rattle. And I walked out of the office that day, and I didn't tell Aquila that, but I remember thinking when I was walking out of there several months ago, I remember thinking, dude, that's going to close out the playlist series. We're going to use that to close it out, because there was something about that song that captured my spirit. Now watch this. That was several months ago. And I had no idea at all that the weekend in which we feature it, we would be as rattled as we are in our culture. But God knew it. I had no concept of that. And so here we are today on this weekend, and we are filled with issues that have rattled us. We are rattled with a virus that just keeps going farther and higher and faster. We're rattled with an unrest between segments of our population that we just don't know what to do about. We're rattled with the most polarized presidential election in our lifetimes. We are totally rattled. Can I speak into the president thing for just a minute? Because it's the weekend in which we vote next week. And I want you to bear with me just for a minute, because I want to kind of give you a couple reminders, kind of from a pastoral standpoint, to our church about this whole presidential thing. If you are rattled right now about whether or not your guy's going to win, and it seems everybody is a little bit, can I remind you of this? Let me put it on the screen so you see it. Jesus is on the white throne no matter who is in the White House, okay? And so watch this. Donald isn't going to change that, and Joe isn't going to change that. And so if you're a person of faith, there is no need to be rattled. Now let me make you feel a little bit better with a bit of a challenge about this too. And if you've ever listened to Alistair Begg on the radio, he's probably, in my opinion, the best preacher we have in America. Alistair reminded us of this last week. Jesus chose 12 guys to follow him. Two of the 12. One was named Levi and one was named Simon. Watch this. Levi was a tax collector employed by the Roman government. Simon was a zealot who rejected any government intervention at all. So two of the 12, we've got big government and we've got small government. We've got liberal and we've got conservative, and somehow those polarized opposites of men came together in a beautiful unity because they knew something that we need to remember. And it comes down to this: the mission of Jesus is higher than the mission of government. Now watch. They understood what was primary and what was secondary. And the minute you take that which is primary and you make it secondary, and you take that which is secondary and you make it primary, there's no doubt that you're going to be rattled. But it won't have to be rattled, because Jesus will be on the white throne no matter who is in the White House, and we know what's most important, and that is the mission of Jesus is in the hands of a controlling, caring, totally together God. So you take all that together and we find ourselves on this weekend, and the reality is, dude, we're just a rattled culture right now. And I think really when you think about it, it gets way more personal than that, because we can talk about those things and really, we can kind of remove ourselves from that a little bit, but what happens when you get rattled personally? What happens when you get unexpected bad news, or you walk through tragedies that you never dreamed you would have to deal with? What happens if life becomes a challenge to you that you just, man, that's just knocking the wind out of my sails? What happens when you get rattled? And the more I've thought about that, in light of the fact that we live in a culture right now that's a little on the rattled side, it just kind of reflects about how it happens to us personally from time to time. Because there's some people in this room right now that are rattled. And so if you're a person of faith, you've got to find yourself asking this question: is there anything at all that would minimize the rattling? Is there anything that would make that better? Is there anything at all that would still the spirit? And so whether it's a virus or whether it's an unrest among groups of people, or whether it's a presidential election, or whether it's what your doctor is going to tell you, or whether it's a marriage that you don't know is going to, whatever it is that's rattled you, the question that comes to the table is there anything at all that is going to be able to lessen this? Because we all get rattled. This past week, I was out of my side yard. I was going to chop up some wood. I had the whole lumberjack thing going, man. I had it together. I was out there kind of looking burly. I had the chainsaw, cutting them in half. I took the axe and just chopped the wood, and just one swing, bam, right in half. I found out if you chainsaw it about 6 inches deep, you can really chop them things right in half. And so I'm out there working in the side yard, getting all the wood ready, man, for winter. And after about 30 minutes, I had to sit down, and I'm breathing like, golly. And I don't remember having to take breaks. I don't remember that. And I was rattled there for a few minutes. Am I getting that old? Am I getting that out of shape? We all get rattled. Then I show up to work the very next day, and I want you to listen to this carefully. There is a former friend of mine on our staff, who sent me an email. And I'm not going to tell you his name. I'll just give you his initials, okay? D. Metter. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean David M. So this guy used to be our facility manager here, and he sends me this email about getting old. Who would do that to your lead pastor? Who would do that? So this guy shows up at the dentist, okay? And he's waiting to see the dentist. He's looking on the wall at the dentist's name, and he goes, doggone it, I think I know that dude. I think I know the dentist. And he says, that really sounds like a guy that I went to high school with. I wonder if he kind of grew up and he became a dentist. And so he gets back and he walks into the room, sees the dentist, and he goes, oh man, that can't be him. This guy's slumped over. He's really old. He's kind of barely moving. His hair is totally bald. He's wrinkled. And you think, well, that's not him. You know, well, I'll just try it. He goes, hey, where'd you come from? And he said his hometown. Where'd you go to school? Went to Lincoln High School. I went to Lincoln High School. Yeah, go Tigers. He goes, what year was it? 1959. He goes, dude, we were in the same class. And the dentist said, really? What did you teach? What subject were you teaching back then? And your facility manager sent that to me, and I've been rattled about it ever since. See, sometimes rattling is just kind of fun stuff, and then it's earth-shaking stuff, and then it's stuff that takes over our world, man. And so it is okay for Christians. I want you to hear this. It is okay for Christians to say, is there anything that would minimize that a little bit? Is there anything that would settle my spirit, that would calm me down? Is there anything that would help me relax in light of what it is that's stirring my soul? And the answer to that is a resounding yes. And it came from a guy who's been dead for more than 2,500 years. Don't ever write off the wisdom of old people. His name was Ezekiel. And he wrote a book that got in your Bibles. And the interesting thing about this unusual book, if you've never read it, is that Ezekiel, the man of God, wrote in what is called allegory. Allegory are strange stories. Sometimes it's poetry. It's just kind of really different literature that there are hidden meanings behind it. It is seldom ever literal. He's not writing about something that he actually saw happen. He tells an allegorical story where there are messages that come from it. In the 37th chapter of his book, he tells an allegorical story about settling your rattle. Now, I want to read it for you. I'm not going to put it on the screen. I just want you to hear it as a story. It's going to take me 3 or 4 minutes to read it all. I want to try to read it with a bit of oomph behind it so you can see the intensity with which he writes. And then I want to show you some things about it. It goes like this. The hand of the Lord was upon me. Ezekiel's saying, God caused me to write this. And he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord, and he set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. He asked me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I said, O sovereign Lord, you alone know. And then he said to me, prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. And then you will know that I am the Lord. So I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound. And the bones came together, bone to bone. I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. And then he said to me, prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, son of man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe into these who are slain, that they may live. And so I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath entered them, and they came to life and stood up on their feet, a vast army. And then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say our bones are dried up and our hope is gone and we're cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. O my people, I'm going to open your graves and bring you up from them, and I will bring you back to the land of Israel. And then you, my people, watch this, will know that I am the Lord. When I open your graves and bring you up from them, I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. And then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. What in the world is that about? I want to suggest that what we're finding out is that interceded throughout the fullness of that allegory are reminders that people need to know with certainty whenever you're rattled. And if you've come in the room this evening and there's There's just stuff in your life that's got you unsettled, and your belly is nauseous from time to time, and you're just not sure how this is going to turn out or what's going to happen, whether it's a national scale thing or just you in your own house, and you're wondering, what can God do that will settle me? Can I give you some reminders from the allegory? Let me show you this one. He, referring to our Father, is never rattled. God will never be rattled. Now, you can get it from the backstory of this allegory. It is written to Jewish people from the Old Testament, and it's kind of hard for us to wrap our mind around Jewish people. Let me talk to you history just for a minute. I won't bore you to death, but we tend to look at the United States and think, we've been around here forever. We're not 250 yet. The Jewish people as a group have been a nation now around 4,000 years. And so if we said historically, talk to us about how the Jews came into being and what happened to them in their early half of their existence. It's important that you see this and you understand where I'm going to go. But for the first couple hundred years of the Jewish people's existence, they were a free people. They were just trying to establish themselves, kind of roaming around different parts of the Middle East. And for about 200 years, that's who they were. Just getting bigger and bigger and more poor people, totally free from any outside intrusion and control over them. For about 200 years, almost as long as we've been in America. And then many of you know the story. They are then brought by Egypt, and now they're under Egyptian bondage, and they're taken to Egypt, where they are now slaves for 400 years. To be technical, it's 430, but it's easy to remember 200 and 400, isn't it? And we all know the story. They escaped Egypt and they get out of there and they go to this land called Canaan, which is the promised land, which is Israel today. And they exist there then now as free people for 800 years. And when the 800 years comes to an end, they are then attacked again by a regime known as Babylon, and they're carried to the nation of Babylon, where they are now slaves in Babylon. And Ezekiel shows up when they've been in Babylon for 30 years. Look at that, 200, 400, 800, 30. And if you're a Jewish person during that period of time, you know all of that history, and you cannot help but be thinking to yourself, here we go again. Here we go again, now where we will be in bondage for centuries and centuries and centuries away from our homeland, away from where they took us. It'd be like all of America being grabbed together in bondage and taken to another country somewhere on the globe. And now we're going to be there forever. And here are these people completely rattled. And Ezekiel shows up. And he says, I know you're all thinking of your land like a valley of dry bones, like there is no hope, like it's dead, it's over with. But God is going to come in, and God is going to change this thing. And God is going to bring life into your nation. And he's going to take you back to Canaan, the land that belongs to you, that is yours. And what those people were hearing is what you and I probably need to hear from time to time when we feel totally rattled and totally hopeless. And I don't know how this thing's going to turn out for me. And the news seems to be bad every single day. And I'm just rattled and nauseous and anxious and worried. And God comes in and says, you might be rattled, but I never am. And God knows everything going on within every one of us. And he's never rattled about that. I want you to see that in print. Whenever you are rattled, one of the most helpful things to remember is that God is not. And so whatever it is that's messing with you today, whether it's a national scale or something personal, I want you to know God's not rattled at all about that. I shared a while ago something I want to kind of remind you of again, because I think it's such a beautiful illustration of it. When we raised our kids as little boys, and you all did this too, anybody who had kids, and you would go to a pool at a hotel or something, and when the kids were little, mom would put the floaties on there enough to, hold up a warship in the ocean, and you'd grab your little child and you'd walk into the pool, and they were splashing and kicking and having fun, and pretty soon you'd just walk to a little bit deeper into the pool, and the deeper it got, the more they clutched into you and put their toenails into your side and held on for dear life. And it struck me one time when that was happening is why they were scared in the deep end. Watch this, because the water was over their head in the shallow end too. Why were they afraid here, but they weren't afraid back here? What's the difference? The difference is they only got afraid when they thought the water was over my head. The water is never over his head. And if you think you're about to drown and you're rattled and man, I don't know how this is going to turn out and I'm worried about it, I just want you to know that it never, ever rattles him. He can take dry bones and he can make them come to life. Now, catch this. Here's another thing that will take the intensity of the rattle and minimize it a little bit, and that is that God is never late. He's never, ever late. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I just want to mention it and move it on. But when Ezekiel gave this allegory, and y'all know the history now, 200, 400, 800, 30. And so at 30, Ezekiel shows up and says, don't be rattled, don't be worried. He's going to breathe life. And man, we're going back home. And watch this. The Jews started going back to Canaan from Babylon. Listen very carefully to this. Not for 40 more years. He said, God's going to breathe life into you. And God didn't do it for 40 more years. And if you think about that in that day and time and the health status of people, when Ezekiel said, we're going home, most of those people never did. They had to wait for the kids to go home. Now, what's that got to say when I get rattled, when I'm a little bit worried about something in my life and I'm consumed about it, I'm starting to get anxious about it in a little bit? I want you to know that I never personally struggle with that first thing. I believe in the resurrection of Jesus. Dude, if he can do that, I ain't got nothing going on that's too big for him. I tend never to get rattled thinking that, oh, God must be worried too, like me. Here's what I get worried about. Here's what rattles me. I'm probably the only one in the room. Nobody else deals with it. I think he's always late. Is anybody else, you pray? Okay, God, I need you to do this. I know you can do it. And then you wait. And it doesn't come. They didn't go home for 40 years. What's that mean? That doesn't mean that God is late. What that means is that God is never early. The pieces just weren't right yet. All the things weren't in place for them to go home yet. And it's very possible that whatever is rattling you right now, if you're wanting, God, I need your power to come in and change this and help this and work through this, it is very possible that God's plan is to help that, but not yet. It may very well be that his intervention won't even have anything to do with you, but it will have to do with people who come after you. I sensed that a couple of months ago when I was praying about something in my life. And something that I really thought that could be a problem, and I was just kind of unsettled about it, and it was bothering my spirit, and I was asking God to intervene. I was telling him how to intervene. Do any of you other than me tell God how to do it? Huh? And I was saying, here's how you can do it. And the big thing was, I need you to do it today, okay, right now. When I wake up tomorrow, have it done. And it just didn't happen, and I was unsettled the whole time. I was rattled until I finally came up with this idea. I'll bet he knows when to do this better than me. And so that became my prayer. Is God, I hope you do X, and you know when it needs to happen. God, I don't know. And I'm just trusting that your timetable is more perfect than mine. And I started praying that, and watch this. I felt a release of spirit within me. because I wasn't on the pressure that God had to do it in my timeline, and I knew that he would take care of it. I would say if there's something that I want you to take home with you, it might be that for some of you. That you think God's got to come tonight or tomorrow or next week or it's all going to fall apart. Release that, man. Release that up to him. And let God take care of that in his time. I want to show you one more. And that is that God is always the goal. And so God is never rattled. God is never late. But he is always the goal. Now, we're going to get a little bit pointed with this part of it. It's going to be a little difficult for some of us to hear this. And I think the whole sermon really comes down to this, because I think this is the point of Ezekiel 37, and it is not for the weak of heart. I'm going to say some things here in a few minutes that some of you are it's going to take you a while to let that soak in and to really accept it, if you will even accept it. But I want you to pay very close attention to something. In the story that I read in Ezekiel 37, 3 different times, God says to Ezekiel, listen carefully to this, so that. So this is going to happen, so that. I'm going to respond this way, so that. 3 different times God said, here's the purpose. Here's what we're going for. Here's the goal. Now think about that. Whatever is rattling you, whatever kind of shakes you up a little bit, whatever kind of gets our country in a frenzy, and you want to say, why is it happening? Why is it happening to me right now? And God says, so that, here's the goal. And 3 different times he tells us that the goal is to know him better. Look at verse 6. Then you will know that I am the Lord. Verse 13. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord. Verse 14. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken and have done it. Dave, what are you trying to tell me? I want you to hear this. The ultimate goal in the story was not to get the Jews back to Israel. That wasn't the main goal. The main goal was that the Jewish people would come to know God better. So what's that got to do with me? And if you're here and you're dealing with this junk and that frightening thing in your life and this thing that's got you all out of kilter, and you're worried about our country, what in the world is it going to come to if he wins or he wins, and you're just consumed with all that, and you want to ask the question, what is going on, God? And I want you to hear that when we are rattled by circumstances, the ultimate goal is not to get rid of your circumstance. Did anybody hear that? The main goal of God is not to rescue you from your circumstance. The main goal of God is that you would know him in a fuller way because of your circumstance. That's what God is going by. And that may happen to be the removal of your circumstance. It may not be that. It may be you're going to deal with that circumstance, and I want you to learn who I am more by the circumstance. And that is so incredibly hard for us as humans. It's so hard for us to deal with that, because when I'm rattled, I want him to help change my situation. So if I can't find a job, and I'm rattled, what am I going to do? How am I going to take care of my family? The ultimate goal, listen to me, family, the ultimate goal is not that I find a job. The ultimate goal is that I get to know God in a fuller way while I don't have a job. And that people around me get to know God in a fuller way by watching how I live while I don't have a job. It is always God's goal that when you're rattled, that you look to him, that you come to know him in a fuller, deeper way than you ever have in all of your life. Now, I'm going to share with you, and I've done parts of this before with some settings, but I'm going to share with you in probably the most transparent way I know how that has worked with me in a situation in my life. The Bible talks about grace and law. And the Bible says the perfect way to live is to balance those perfectly, to be graceful and merciful and kind and sympathetic, and to be law. Do it the right thing. Don't do the wrong thing. And the Bible says when you want to live your life perfectly, you balance those exactly the same. Jesus was the only one who could do that. Most people, if you think of like those scales with those dishes, most people put weight on one or the other a little bit more. So maybe you got a little bit more grace than you do law, or maybe you got a little bit more law than you do grace. And most people, if you kind of know yourself, if you don't, ask somebody who knows you, they'll tell you where you're at, and you're kind of get a little bit out of kilter. And I don't know if it's because of the way I was raised. I don't know if it's a DNA thing. For my whole life, I've had a little bit more weight on the law part. I think maybe that's why I married someone who has a little more weight on the grace side, or I'd probably killed my kids. That was a joke. I wasn't serious about that, partly anyway. And so there's nothing wrong to be out of kilter a little bit. Everybody is out of kilter a little bit. And there's nothing wrong to be a little bit heavy on the law as you are on the grace, unless you are a pastor, because we're supposed to be nice and kind and soft. And so I've always known that's something that I got to work on a little bit and get that fixed a little bit. And it took my parents to change that. Now, my sis is in the room tonight, my sister, and she'll relive this a little bit while I talk about it. Very, very dark time in our life. Our parents were married for about 30 years, I think about 27 actually, but about 30 years they were together, and then they were divorced. And for about a decade or so, they were married to other people. They kind of took a time out from each other, and those, pretty big time out, and those relationships ended, and then they got back together and remarried each other for the last 15, 20 years of their life. So they kind of had 3 segments of their life together. When the first segment was coming to an end, and my mama had called us together and informed us that she was going to be ending the relationship with our dad, my heavy law kicked in immediately. And I wasn't receiving the information very well, and I reacted kind of wrong. I'd been a pastor for about 6 months in my life, and so I still hadn't worked out any of that, and I didn't respond well to that. And I remember telling my mom that I'm going to take you to a counselor I know tomorrow. And so she went and kind of did it just to get me off her back. And we showed up at a counselor's office the very next day. There's a guy that I knew, Dr. Bruce Parmenter, a godly family marriage counselor. We walk in, we sat at a little table with Dr. Parmenter, and I remember him looking and saying, "What can I do?" And for the next 45 minutes, I unloaded on everything my mom was doing to bring destruction to our family and dividing our family. And I just gave him everything I had for about 45 minutes. And when I finally took a breath, he said, "So let me make sure I get this right. You want me to tell your mom," who hadn't said boo yet, "you want me to tell your mom that she is wrong for divorcing your dad?" And I said, "Duh, yes, you've interpreted that correctly." And he looked at me and said a sentence that absolutely changed the course of my life. And if he didn't tell me that, I don't think I'd be standing here right now. He said this: "Well, I'm not going to do that. But if you want, I will talk to you about forgiveness and how God offers forgiveness to you and how you ought to offer it to others." Somebody say, "Whoa." It was an Ezekiel moment of rattling my bones. And nothing happened immediately. Remember the 40 years before things happened? For our family, it was probably about half of that. But if I went back and looked at 15, 20 years after that experience, and I look at it, here's what I know. All of our family come to know the Lord, all of them. All of our family were restored into healthy relationships, stronger than they ever had been. And the weirdness of your parents coming back together and spending the rest of their life together in a committed, joyful marriage. God caused dry bones to come to life. But the goal was that we knew him better. So if you're rattled, the miracle is not changing your circumstance. The miracle is that you know him better. Father, I thank you that what happened with this Ezekiel character 2,500 years ago still happens in our homes and our communities and our churches and our nation. And why you want us to know us better when we're so messed up, I'll never know. But I praise you. I praise you that you're big enough to make dry bones come alive. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
Okay, guys, I don't know about you all, but I think that was one of my favorite sermon series that we've done in a while here.
Yeah.
The songs, what was your favorite?
Rattle.
Rattle?
For sure, Rattle.
Rattle might have been my favorite this week too. We just did it. We are so excited to start our next series though. That's gonna happen next week. It's called Broken Halos. It's gonna be awesome as well. So come back, join us at Eastside Online. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, your family, get everyone here. We love you all. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next week.